Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, July 16th, and we have summer weather. Momish summer weather is really taking over a lot of states in this country, and we are making progress over here as well. First of all, we're going to start off with Baltimore, Maryland. It's been summer there for quite some time. Hot and humid conditions remain in that city as it has been for the past several days as a Bermuda high pressure system, which one would think if it's affecting Baltimore, it should be affecting the entire East Coast. And it is on some level affecting the entire East Coast, but not on a consistent basis and not with the same intensity that it's affecting Baltimore or Washington, D.C. High temperatures in Baltimore, Maryland forecast to be mid-90s today. National Weather Service says that they had to slightly limit those high temperatures, but nonetheless, heat indices between 95 and 100 degrees expected this afternoon. Dew points will be slightly lower today, but it still will remain humid in Baltimore for today, but tomorrow is really when the intense heat comes, assuming that thunderstorms hold off until later in the day. High temperatures forecast once again to be in the mid-90s, but tomorrow's high temperatures will be combined with really high humidity, dew points going into the mid-70s. That's going to make temperatures feel at least 10 degrees warmer than they actually are. That's assuming temperatures are between 90 and 95. If temperatures get higher than 95, then those types of dew points will actually make the temperature feel even more than 10 degrees warmer than they actually are. Current heat indices forecast for tomorrow in Baltimore, which is east of the Blue Ridge Mountains, is expected to be around 105. Areas to the west of those mountains, heat indices around 100 degrees for tomorrow. 105 degrees is heat advisory criteria. One of the things that will have to be watched in Baltimore, especially for tomorrow, is the development of thunderstorms, possibly even heavy, really heavy rain actually, but not exactly the ideal situation to produce flash flooding, but it does remain a possibility. A front comes by tomorrow night in Baltimore, moves through Baltimore and Washington, D.C. The forecast confidence for Sunday becomes lower. It becomes significantly lower because there's not so much clarity in regards to that front. High temperatures somewhere from the mid-80s, possibly 90 degrees again on Sunday. Monday, the city dries out, and there's more confidence in Monday's forecast than Sunday's forecast. High temperatures once again between 85 and 90 degrees. Tuesday, an increase in heat and humidity puts those temperatures back into the low 90s. And then we will see from Wednesday onward another front comes through. Temperatures probably a little bit cooler, but then once again the forecast confidence remains slightly lower. But Baltimore is not necessarily the most exciting weather for this week. It has been getting consistency, and consistency is fascinating, and especially in cities which are north of Miami, consistency is always fascinating. See those temperatures in the 90s. But when we go up into the upper Midwest, this is going to be the highlight. The northern plains for this week. So you remember back in June, the northern plains summer started off with a roar up in the upper Midwest and the northern plains. We were seeing temperatures well into the hundreds, even past 105 degrees for places in North Dakota. Widespread hundreds with drought conditions. It almost appeared like summer started and summer was here to remain. It was really like an air mass from the 1930s that took over the upper Midwest. Well, that air mass from the 1930s did develop, but it developed in the Pacific Northwest and Southwest Canada. But for next week, the Minneapolis, Minnesota National Weather Service says there's very limited ways to describe next week's weather pattern other than dry and hot. And Minneapolis, Minnesota is going to be east of the intense heat. So they're not even going to get it so hard yet. We're going to have to see what happens the following week. But when you go into Bismarck, North Dakota, they are struggling with the following interesting weather variable. It's not something that you hear discussed all the time. You rarely hear this discussed, especially in a scientific forecast discussion. It's going to be hot in Bismarck, North Dakota. It's going to be very hot. Probably, they say, 2 days next week, there will be widespread hundreds. They don't know which 2 days it is. It's going to be hot from Sunday all the way through Shabbos next week, the entire week. If smoke, here's the variable is smoke. If smoke is limited, if the smoke from the forest fires is limited, temperatures will be as hot as they can possibly get this time of the year. That's how hot it's going to be. They say at least the 99th percentile, possibly even higher. There might even be records broken. That's for Bismarck, North Dakota, and for much of North Dakota. There's a ridge with the thermal part underneath the ridge. To me, that describes a dome of heat, right? Perfect dome of heat, which is actually once again going to affect areas north of the international border as well. The variable they're dealing with, there's two variables. One variable is the smoke. That's the rare variable. The other one is the humidity. So at some point there is expected to be humidity, and we don't know how much humidity. But the one thing that there is consistency on is the heat indices. If there is low humidity, so temperatures will be really hot. Heat indices, they say, would generally be in the 90s because temperatures are generally forecast to be in the 90s, but there will be a couple days where temperatures go into the hundreds. Forecast highs today already in the mid-90s. Tomorrow, mid-90s, onward, mid-90s, upper 90s, and then low hundreds. This is for Bismarck, North Dakota. This city's way up north. This city does not usually get this hot, but the entire week next week is just going to be hot. The same thing for Minneapolis, Minnesota. Not quite as hot yet. We'll have to wait and see what happens the week after that, because this is a ridge in a dome of heat which originally was in the northwest Pacific. It is now starting to move east very gradually, but excessive heat watches are in effect for southeast Montana. That is the furthest, that's further progression of this ridge, of this dome of heat. There has not been excessive heat watches in that area. Shabbos through Wednesday, excessive heat watch in effect. High temperatures between 103 and 106 degrees. That's for many of the cities in Montana. And there also might even be in monsoon moisture will start to get added to the air later on in the week. There also could be fire weather hazards as well. They don't discuss the smoke as being a weather variable, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be a weather variable. It just might be they didn't articulate that variable in their discussion, whereas the Bismarck, North Dakota one did. There is discussion about the possibility of extending the excessive heat watch, which will likely become a warning, and extending that through Thursday as this heat continues, and it's just going to be consistent, and it's going to be hot. Temperatures, of course, in the desert Southwest are just hot. You know, the normal high in Phoenix, Arizona is like 107 or 108 degrees this time of the year. It's just hot over there. And they have the monsoon moistures over there as well. And I have not checked what temperatures are in the Pacific Northwest. I just know that the dome of heat is progressing eastward. And the question to me is always, well, at what point is it going to come into Chicago? Well, not next week. We're going to see high temperatures mostly in the 80s for Chicago for next week. But there is a gradual warming trend where temperatures are going to perhaps come very close to 90 as we go through the week, maybe even 90, but that's not currently on the forecast. Highs today only low to mid 70s for the Chicago area, and we're going to dry out tomorrow. That cold front has already pushed through Chicago, and it will indeed be pushing south of St. Louis tonight and tomorrow. Cooler air for the St. Louis area, but through Tuesday with highs in the low to mid 80s, temperatures back into the 90s with high humidity for Wednesday onward for the St. Louis area. Those are the weather highlights, the consistent heat and the intense heat in Baltimore, Maryland. The reason that's so impressive is because of the isolation of that heat. Boston, Massachusetts will see highs today also in the low 90s, but they don't have that consistency that Baltimore and Washington, D.C. has in other areas in the mid-Atlantic area. If you look on the weather map, you'll consistently see a bubble of 90s right over that area. And when you're talking about, generally speaking, dew points have been in the 70s, which is really high. So that's really sticky weather. The exception is today, where it's just going to be normal humidity. But tomorrow, the humidity really skyrockets in that area. So there, and then we have the hot and dry weather pattern for Minnesota, which is the really part of the weather pattern in North Dakota. It gets hotter there. We have that variable of smoke, which we didn't have that variable back in June. That was the beginning of the wildfire season. That's one reason why June temperatures might get hotter than July temperatures. The smoke, they're expecting it to reduce visibility in some areas down to 4 miles. That's a reduction of 6 miles because normal visibility is 10 miles. So we have that, which is a discussion, especially for the North Dakota area. If there's only a little bit of smoke, it may not affect the temperatures that much, but otherwise there may be a significant drop in temperatures as that smoke blocks out the sunlight, and the real heat is going to be taking place in Montana, eastern Montana, and we're going to probably see the progression of that move east, if maybe gradual, but the progression will be taking place nonetheless. Drought conditions, well, Chicago, the northern Illinois, remains under an extreme drought. That's what the drought monitor says. All that rain we had did very little to reduce the drought conditions, and we're getting set up. We're set, the area's getting prepared here in the Midwest for this upcoming dome of heat that will be situated probably just to the west of Minnesota, maybe even touching Minnesota, not Chicago yet. That brings our little podcast to an end. But you know what? It's not going to bring it to an end, because I want to say the following. Record high for today here in Chicago took place in 1887. Now, I love that. 1887. Okay. And the official weather station was right next to Lake Michigan. You can just imagine what highs were well inland. Record high for today, 100 degrees. That's what this is, 1887. This information comes from the Chicago Tribune, Tom Skilling's weather section over here. Normal high for today is 84 degrees, normal low 64, record low 49 degrees. Set back in 1945. High temperatures yesterday, 81 degrees at Midway with a low of 70, only 11 degree difference. The official high was 79 at O'Hare with a low of 69. Lakefront also 79 and 69. Valparaiso saw a high of 81 degrees, a low of 72 degrees. And the coolest areas were, the morning temperatures were Romeoville. Morning temperatures were 68. High temperature yesterday, 79. In Aurora, morning temperature 68. High was 78 degrees. And I think Gary, Indiana, is the place which saw the smallest difference between night and day. Morning temperature 72, that was the low. 79 was the high temperature. So the shore temperature on the Chicago shore, 72 degrees. We're making progress. We're expecting it to hit 80 degrees in a few weeks. The crib water temperature, 71 degrees. Shkia tonight, sunset tonight here is 8:23. And remember, every 13 miles east you go, the sunset gets 1 minute earlier. That's the way it goes. Every 13 miles east you go, the sunset gets 1 minute earlier. So imagine, I don't know what it is for South Bend, but then you have to add an hour. So how many miles, however many miles it is to South Bend, Indiana from here on a bird's fly, whatever it's called, not according to the roads. So you divide that by 13. And then you subtract that number from 8:23, and then you add an hour. So I'm going to do it roughly in my head. It's, what is it, like a 2-hour drive? 1 hour, 15-minute drive. So what is it, like 100 miles? 100 miles. So what is that? 7 times 13 is 13, 26, 39. That's 78 is 90. Let's say it's 7. Let's say we subtract 7 we get to 8:16, and then we add an hour, 9:16. Okay, I just estimated for South Bend, Indiana, the sunset is 9:16, and you know what? This phone is slow, but I want to look that up. 9:16, and what is it for real? 9:16, this app is real slow. It's Tom Skilling's little weather app. 9:16, it's not the app, it's my phone that's slow. While I'm waiting, first of all, let's just see. So again, 9:16, while we're waiting, I'm going to forget about 6. How do I remember 16? 9:16. Just remember 9:16. Wave heights for today, 1 to 3 feet. Wave heights tomorrow, 2 to 4 feet. Chicago's air quality Thursday was good. The Friday forecast is expected to be good, and the critical pollutant is particulates. Sunrise today was at 5:29 a.m. I still have to remember that number, 9:16. Okay, and here we go. While we're waiting, I'm just gonna read this. Look at the weather map here. We have temperatures well into the 90s. You know, I've said this already. For Baltimore, we have Orlando, Florida, temperatures back into the 90s. For that location, hottest temperature yesterday in the U.S. was Death Valley, California, 119 degrees, and the coldest temperature was 35 miles southwest of Choctaw, Montana, where the temperature was 33 degrees. I don't know why I can't just say the name of the city. But according to Alexa, which works together with AccuWeather, temperature hit 101 degrees today in 2 cities in Russia. I can't tell you for sure if that was official, because sometimes the AccuWeather temperatures I've noticed are not official, so they might be a degree or 2 off. But that's what she said. Alexa, the robot, said that it's 101 degrees. It was 101 degrees in those 2 cities. Okay, so again, for Chicago, we said 8:23 p.m. is shkia. Okay, now I'm still waiting for South Bend. 8:23 p.m. according to this weather app. WGN weather app is shkia, 8:23 p.m. And we'll just quickly go through the temperatures here in Chicago. Today, a high around 73 degrees with scattered showers, which gradually go south of our area. Temperatures remaining in the 60s by the beach, and northeast winds 10 to 18 miles per hour. Tomorrow, partly sunny and breezy with a high in the mid to upper 70s. Northeast winds 10 to 20 miles per hour. So winds remain off the lake, and that will keep temperatures in the low 70s by the lake. The question always is, if the lake water temperature is 72 degrees at the shore and 71 degrees by the crib, why will the lake breeze cause temperatures to drop into the 60s at the beaches for today? So I've always heard because well out into the lake, the water temperature is in the 60s. We're going to see a chance for an isolated shower south. Why is this? Here we go. Shkia tonight in South Bend is 9:17 p.m. That is awesome. Because, by the way, there are places in Chicago which have sunset at 8:24 p.m. So I estimated 9:16 based upon the 2-hour drive or 1 hour, 15-minute drive. We came up with 100 miles, divided that by 13, came up with, so it would be 7 minutes less, then added an hour, came up with 9:16, but it's 9:17 p.m. for tonight. Tomorrow, shkia in South Bend is at 9:16 p.m. And then Sunday is when we get, now that I'm here, today for South Bend, thunderstorms highs near 73. This is the Tom Skilling app with winds northwest, very similar to Chicago. Winds north to northeast. Tomorrow, it's really the exact same thing. You look at it and you see the high temperature for Chicago tomorrow, 76, says Skilling. His app says for South Bend, 77 degrees. And it's the exact same forecast. And then Sunday, high in Chicago, 81 degrees. On this app, South Bend, 83 degrees. Winds both places, east, northeast. Monday, high in Chicago, 85 degrees. South Bend, 84 degrees. Winds north 5 to 10 miles per hour for South Bend. Winds north to northeast for Chicago, 10 to 15 miles per hour. And then Tuesday, highs in Chicago, 87 degrees. And on this app, it says a high of 84 degrees. There could also be different forecasters here. Wednesday, high in Chicago, 83. Highs in South Bend, 81 degrees. And Thursday, highs in Chicago, 87 degrees. South Bend, 84 degrees. With in Chicago, there doesn't show a chance for thunderstorms, but on Thursday, there looks like there's a slight chance for storms in Indiana, but very, very similar weather. Basically, temperatures in the low to mid 80s. Sunday onward for the whole week next week. Sunday through Thursday. Okay, that will bring this to an end. Thank you for listening. And everyone have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful Shabbos.